Hi, I'm Sarah from The Upcoming. Pleasure to speak to you today about this amazing film, obviously based on the short story. But for people who perhaps aren't familiar with Cat Person, can you tell us a bit about what they can expect?
Yes, so hard to do this without giving spoilers, but I will try. Yes, so this is a movie based on a short story that was very explosive in the culture in 2017. It is about a 20-year-old undergraduate who is pursued and goes on a date and has a sexual encounter with an older man. And beyond that, I shouldn't give away too much, but it is neither a love story nor a story of assault. It's a story of the horrible, mushy gray area of ambivalence that is in between that defines most of our relationships in life. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
And of course, this short story, I mean, it landed at such a specific time, kind of, in the midst of hashtag Me Too taking off, when all these sort of, like you say, these different discussions were being sparked that perhaps that people, weren't able to speak about before. And it really sort of caught people's imaginations. When you first read it, did you already have in mind, what, I think that's going to work really well as a film? And at what point did that process start?
I did not think that. I loved the story and I thought, I don't know how the story gets adapted. It's so internal. The specificity of the writing is so precise and so well observed that I don't know how that translates to the screen. And I don't know how it translates to the screen in a way that's accessible and doesn't feel too limited to a tiny independent internal movie that only women will see. I just didn't see how it would have the reach that the story did. Because the platform for the story being the New Yorker kind of put it in front of a lot of men and a lot of people of all ages and forced everybody into a conversation about the nuances of this dynamic. But but I know, just I know how movies work and I know that like men are often not seeing movies about women and young women's films are often dismissed as chick flicks. And so it's sort of an echo chamber of women seeing women's stories. So I didn't see a way for it to work. I loved it and I thought this is a perfect format for this story and that's it. It was short-sighted of me because when I came back to it, reading the script that Michelle Ashford had written, I thought, oh yeah, this is exactly how I would have thought to do this, but she figured out how to make that psychology and all of the darkness of it like manifest in a movie that scratches at some of that darkness too, just in a real cinematic way. So yeah, Michelle had the vision. I just was lucky enough to be considered for the role of directing. And then I kind of had to prove to Michelle and everybody else that I was the person to do it because I had directed a series called The Flight Attendant, which had some thriller and some comedy and all of that, but it wasn't out yet. I'd filmed it, but we were heading into COVID, so the series hadn't aired, and so I was most known for my comedy writing. I was most known for Booksmart and other things that were like not this tone. So I felt really passionate, like about how I had to convince people that I could do it. Just, yeah.
And this incredible cast, I mean, perhaps there's always that slight pressure, I guess, when you're adapting any kind of text or novel or anything. People have obviously used their imaginations and have a picture in their head of who these people are. So, it's not just you deciding, you've kind of maybe thinking that it needs to match up to people's own kind of vision of them. But it's so, so well cast. How do you decide on Amelia and Nicholas for your two protagonists?
Um, Amelia was, as soon as I saw Coda, which wasn't in the theater yet, but I got a link to the movie after it premiered at Sundance. And the minute I saw it, I just wanted to offer her the part. And basically, we had one Zoom meeting because it was peak COVID. And the way she spoke about everything felt so grounded and mature and like she had such a healthy sense of ego. I mean, like ego strength. Like she felt like a person who I could, despite her youth, talk to about these issues and trust that she would be comfortable playing this role and doing that scene and she would speak up if she wasn't comfortable. It felt like I was dealing with someone who was um, grounded and communicative and adult enough that I would feel like I could put them in this movie and I wasn't exploiting them. In addition to how amazing she is and how funny she is and how soulful she is. But also the thing that she also has is like, she's Margot's age. So she really feels like she's that age, and that is a young age. You're not like casting a 28-year-old and saying that person can look 18. You're like, this person looks like they're an undergraduate. And Amelia has this ability to play normal girl on TV and in movies, even though she's like a beautiful actress. She really does sell that in a way that I think she's very watchable. She's very easy to connect to. And she's very easy to connect to for like a smart female viewer. She feels smart, substantial, like she gets the joke. Could be your friend, she could be you. It's a really rare quality for actresses to be able to, and actors to have that, like that instant. I think that's like a star quality. It's that you connect to them so much for whatever reason. So she really had that, and she was perfect for it. And I like that she wasn't too in the public eye. Like I like that she wasn't too, people didn't have a lot of baggage around her, or any baggage around her. So they could just watch Margot and immerse themselves in the story and not be thinking about like who she's dating or how many Instagram followers she has or something. And for Nick, it was a harder challenge because in some ways, because Robert is, Margot is the viewer's avatar. She's like the every girl, but Robert is a very specific guy in the story. And I wanted to do justice to what that was. He's a guy who's like attractive enough, but also can be scary, but also she also can have disgust for him. He can be all these different things. So it had to be somebody who could like kind of look and feel really different based on how I framed them, and she's seeing them, and where the perspective matters, because her opinion of him and who he is changes a lot throughout her experience of their encounter. So he had to sort of be able to sell all of those things. And there are not a lot of actors who are able to do all of that. And Nick was perfect. And I also wanted a man who other men like, because I wanted them to be able to see themselves in him enough that they could like invest in the story and follow the story from his side of it too.
And when you were saying there at the beginning about kind of working this slightly unique genre space, because there's so much of a build-up of tension right from the beginning, even just kind of these references and the walk that she's doing across campus, and it's already feeling creepy before anything else happens. But then there's also real comedic moments. I mean, even that pinnacle scene, which is just so incredibly put together, where they sleep together, where she's kind of, the inner voice is then, her leaning against the wall. And that's such a great illustration of how a lot of women feel in that scenario. Like, why am I not acting on what's going on in my head? So what was your approach in that sense? And maybe you could talk a bit about that scene specifically and how you pulled that off.
Yeah, so Michelle Ashford really wrote that scene that way. It wasn't a concept that I invented like for this. I mean, it was really something that I came to. And Michelle's really interested in psychology, and as am I, and kind of figuring out how different ways that people process an experience where they don't want to be present in their body. At the most extreme form, it's like how people talk about trauma or abuse or assault or whatever. But also we dissociate from ourselves too as women, because we're not always able to say what we think. There's like an ingrained fear sometimes about being honest about certain things, especially when the person you're being honest to is like bigger and stronger than you physically. Like there's just a level of fear about it. And so that same feeling of you end up in situations you don't really want to be in, but it still feels like less of a risk than having to like de-escalate an angry man. So you just do things, and then you're floating above yourself, watching yourself do them and thinking like, how did I get here? But also you're so detached from your own body at the moment that you're supposed to be really connected to another person. You're the least connected. So it was kind of the perfect way of articulating that theme, like the theme of just, your brain is working overtime and your body is like it's like a different object doing its own thing, which is not a healthy or functional or like productive, like sexual experience, but it's one that a lot of us have experienced. Yeah. Yeah. The scene was hard. I mean, it was hard. It was hard conceptually because it felt really scary and intimidating to approach it. But then as we broke it down, we just kind of strategically approached it like, this is the scene we have to be the most on top of our game for, because it is the scene where it's going to be the most uncomfortable to watch. And we're a bunch of people who feel comfortable around each other, trying to like surgically make something that is designed to make people feel a certain way. So it was a lot of like planning what we're seeing, what we're not seeing, talking through every beat of that sexual encounter, including the stuff that's outside the frame, was a big part of it too, because we wanted, without having any nudity or like showing graphic things, it is pretty graphic in terms of what it's implying. It's pretty specific. Like you're not getting any time cuts. You're just having to watch the whole thing. So we had to like talk through the sex as like a group, which was quite an icebreaker, but also helpful. It's just a different assignment. You know, you're not like, and then they have sex at the end and we'll figure it out. You have to like really drill into what is going on beat by beat by beat. And that is a quite intense thing to do at work.
And I'm almost out of time, but just, in terms of what people can take away from it, I mean, like we said, this is not it's not a romantic movie. It's not necessarily about sexual assault, but it is dealing with this gray area. And I think, there's been a few shows which perhaps are more veering to the assault side, I May Destroy You, or even the Molly Manning Walker's recent How to Have Sex. But all of these are kind of working in the same space. And I think it's really interesting how it plays with your perception of it at some points. Like, is she kind of overreacting? Is she imagining certain things? Is her paranoia taking over when she's but then when things do sort of go in a certain direction, you realize that sometimes that's justified to have that paranoia. So what do you hope people take away from watching it and working out that knotty space?
Yeah, I mean, I think that one thing I hope people take away is just that like issues around consent are really complicated. And this is not a movie about consent in the sense that she's not consenting. She is consenting. But like we've put so much emphasis on the two sexes trying to like do a dance around each other to figure out if something's acceptable, which both burdens the woman with having to know what she wants every second and then stick to that answer, and the man to have to sort of figure out if she is or isn't meaning what she's saying. And both people seem pretty clueless about like both parties are like under equipped to completely know themselves in a way that they're like going to stand behind in a whatever on trials. So I guess what I'm saying is like it seems obvious to say, but like a positive experience with someone is about connecting with them. And there's so many ways that we're not really functionally connecting, but we think we're connecting now. And we sort of, I think all we can do is try to like connect in ways that are not as simple as, can I get this answer out of somebody? Or I just have to behave like I saw in a porn and then it'll be this, it'll be that. It's like, if people actually kind of wait until they feel like they can be authentic with each other, it's probably going to set them up for like a better, more functional relationship. But because most people don't wait, like this is prevalent, and all we can do is just try to get better at communicating authentically and acknowledging what can be hard about that and seeing each other's side of it. And for men to understand that it's not always easy for women to, that women are conditioned to tell them what they want to hear. That's what we're taught to do. So it further complicates the idea that they can trust a yes, which is not an excuse for like not understanding, but it is sort of an explanation for why we mess up so many times too. So I think we're just having a little bit more compassion is probably necessary. More communication, all of that,
And it just made me think of that line where her mum says, you need to learn to put up with a bit of discomfort. Almost, yeah, maybe we have been taught that that's what relationships involve. And actually, it doesn't have to be that way. Like actually honesty and communication can make a better experience for both parties.
Yeah, it's interesting how like the most feminist people will give that advice still. Like I mean, Hope Davis's character is extreme, but like I've gotten that advice about dating from people in my life. Like you need to be a little bit more, you need to make the man feel like a man. You need to not be emasculating. I mean, that is still a message we get. We're still dealing with this polarity of like strong women, like there's a strong woman, hardened woman, like spinster woman cliche, workaholic woman thing that we're like still kind of dealing with. And the alternative is like this more pliable, vulnerable woman that is like more feminine. And it is hard when you're trying to figure out, especially as a young woman, like who you are, how you want to be perceived, you want the validation of feeling desired. Like it's hard not to kind of like try to twist yourself into knots, trying to be something to get a certain response. So I don't know, just for the two sexes to like understand what the other is up against isn't going to solve the problem, but it can at least provide a little bit of a bridge because we're really not coming from the same context culturally at all. And that's important to know, you know?
And very finally, you know, obviously you've done so many amazing things, you know, working on Booksmart, Flight Attendant, and this. Do you know what you're going to be working on next?
Well, I finished another movie with Amelia also. Um, it's called Winner and it's coming out next year. And it is a coming of age story in the vein of Lady Bird about this whistleblower reality winner. They've had a couple movies about her that have come out, but it's this girl from Texas who um, sort of grew up loving guns and CrossFit and animals and was a really quirky Texas person played by Amelia. And then she went on to work for the government and ended up being a whistleblower, serving time in prison. But it's like Amelia in a totally different role. It's like a jacked up CrossFitting Amelia. So check it out.
Cannot wait for that. Well, thank you so
Yeah.
much for sharing all that with me, and can't wait for everyone else to obviously a cat person. And then this next year. Thanks a lot.
Thanks so much. Appreciate it.
So nice to chat to you. Thank you. Cheers. Bye.